In the heart of war-torn Syria, two women's paths collide in the most unlikely of places, a bombed-out hospital where hope seems as scarce as medical supplies. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a seasoned trauma surgeon from Barcelona, never expected her humanitarian mission to lead her to Captain Sarah Chen, a decorated military engineer whose walls are as fortified as the compound she builds. When bullets fly and lives hang in the balance, professional boundaries blur into something neither woman saw coming. In 30 days, they'll either save a city or lose themselves to a love that could destroy everything they've worked for. Sometimes the most dangerous missions aren't about the enemy outside, but the vulnerability within. The explosion that shattered the morning calm sent Dr. Elena Vasquez diving behind an overturned ambulance, her medical bag clutched against her chest like armor that could never be thick enough. Dust and debris rained down on the makeshift hospital courtyard where she'd been triaging patients just moments before. Through the settling haze, she saw her a figure in desert camouflage moving with lethal precision, assault rifle raised, scanning for threats with eyes that missed nothing. "All clear?" The woman's voice cut through the chaos, authoritative and steady. Captain Sarah Chen lowered her weapon, revealing sharp features etched with the kind of focus that only came from years of life and death decisions. Their eyes met. Across 20 feet of devastation, and Elena felt something shift in her chest, something that had nothing to do with the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "You're the surgeon?" Sarah stated, not asked. She approached with measured steps, her gaze taking in Elena's blood-stained scrubs and the determined set of her jaw. "Captain Chen, Corps of Engineers. I'm here about the infrastructure repairs." Elena stood, brushing concrete dust from her dark hair. "Dr. Vasquez, and right now, I need to get back to my patients more than I need to discuss plumbing." She gestured toward the damaged medical tent where groans of pain drifted out like prayers into an indifferent sky. "That blast took out the main water line," Sarah said, falling into step beside her. "No clean water, no surgery. You'll lose more patients to infection than you'll save." The brutal logic hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd seen it before, watched people die not from their injuries, but from the cascade of complications that followed when basic infrastructure collapsed. She paused at the tent entrance, studying the woman beside her. Sarah's hands were steady despite the chaos, her presence somehow both commanding and reassuring. "How long?" Elena asked. 72 hours for a temporary fix, 2 weeks for something permanent." Elena's laugh held no humor. "In 72 hours, half these people will be dead?" "Not if I can help it." Sarah's voice carried a promise that made Elena's pulse quicken. "I've worked in worse conditions. Give me a team and I'll have water running by tomorrow night." Looking into Sarah's unwavering gaze, Elena felt a flicker of something she'd almost forgotten hope. And something else, something warmer and more dangerous, that she definitely didn't have time for. Not here, not now. Not with a woman who looked like she could carry the world on her shoulders and never let it show if the weight was breaking. "Her, tomorrow night," Elena repeated, extending her hand. When Sarah's fingers closed around hers, calloused and strong, Elena felt the first crack in walls she'd spent years building around her heart. The generator's hum provided a soundtrack to Elena's nightmares as she worked by artificial light, her hands moving with practiced precision through her 5th-10th surgery in 24 hours. Across the compound, she could hear Sarah's team, working the grinding of machinery, shouted instructions in 3 different languages, the occasional burst of welding sparks that lit up the darkness like brief stars. "Doctor, we need you outside." The voice belonged to Marcus, Sarah's demolitions expert, and his tone made Elena's stomach drop. She stripped off her surgical gloves and followed him into the courtyard where Sarah knelt beside a young woman Elena recognized, Amira, one of the local translators who'd been helping coordinate between the medical team and the community, soaked through Sarah's hands where she pressed them against Amira's abdomen. Her usual composure had cracked, revealing something raw and desperate beneath. "Sniper," Sarah said without looking up. Thought her when she was running messages between the checkpoints. Elena dropped to her knees beside them, her medical training, overriding the personal shock of seeing Sarah vulnerable. "Get her inside now." The next 3 hours blurred together: surgery, complications, more surgery. Sarah never left the medical tent, though Elena caught her pacing in the shadows, jaw clenched with the helpless fury of someone used to fixing things that suddenly couldn't be fixed with tools or engineering prowess. Elena finally emerged. Exhausted and hollow, she found Sarah sitting on a pile of rubble, staring at her hands. The confident soldier from yesterday had been replaced by someone fighting to hold herself together. "She live," Elena said, settling beside her. "Clean through and through. She was lucky." Sarah's laugh was bitter. Lucky she was carrying my message when it happened. My operational plan that put her in that alley at exactly the wrong time. Elena studied Sarah's profile in the moonlight, the strong line of her jaw, the way her short black hair caught silver highlights. "You can't carry responsibility for every bullet fired in a war zone, can I?" Sarah turned to face her, and Elena saw exhaustion that went bone deep. "Every structural analysis I do, every route I plan, every recommendation I make, it all affects who lives and who dies, just like your surgeries." The parallel hit Elena unexpectedly. She'd never thought of her work and Sarah's as similar, but there it was, 2 women making split-second decisions with lives hanging in the balance. "The difference is, I signed up to save lives. You signed up to serve," Sarah interrupted. "To protect, same mission, different tools." Their shoulders were touching now, and Elena could feel the warmth of Sarah's body despite the cool night air. Something electric passed between them, an understanding that went deeper than words. When Sarah's hand found hers in the darkness, Elena didn't pull away. "We should get some sleep," Sarah whispered, but neither of them moved. "We should," Elena agreed, her thumb tracing across Sarah's knuckles. Tomorrow would bring new crises, new impossible choices. But right now, there was just this 2 women finding solace and connection, professional admiration kindling into something infinitely more dangerous and infinitely more necessary. The attack came at dawn, mortars screaming overhead like harbingers of hell itself. Elena was thrown from her cot as the first shell hit the supply depot, sending medical equipment scattering like deadly confetti. Through the canvas walls of her tent, she could see Sarah's silhouette against the orange glow of burning fuel, directing her team with hand signals while returning fire with her sidearm. "Elena," Sarah's voice cut through the explosions. "We need to evacuate the critical patients." Elena's mind clicked into disaster mode, the same cold clarity that had gotten her through medical school, through her residency in Barcelona's trauma center, through 2 previous humanitarian missions that had tested every limit she thought she had. She grabbed her emergency medical kit and ran for the main treatment tent. Inside was chaos patients crying out in terror, the less injured trying to help the bedridden, her nursing staff moving with practiced efficiency despite the horror unfolding around them. But it was the sight of Sarah appearing at the tent entrance, covered in dust and soot, assault rifle slung across her back and determination blazing in her dark eyes, that made Elena's heart skip. "Main road's been cut," Sarah reported, breathing hard, "but I can get us out through the old irrigation tunnels. It's risky, but it's our only shot." Elena looked around at their patients, 3 post-operative cases who couldn't be moved, 2 children with severe trauma injuries, an elderly man whose infected leg wound would kill him without continued treatment. Moving them could be fatal. Staying definitely would be. How risky? she asked. Sarah's hesitation told her everything. The tunnels haven't been used in years. Structural integrity is questionable. And if they find us down there... She didn't need to finish the thought. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. When she opened them, Sarah was watching her, with an expression of complete trust, as if Elena's choice would somehow be the right one, simply because Elena was making it. We go, Elena decided, all of us. The evacuation was a nightmare of logistics and improvisation. Sarah's engineering expertise turned jury-rigged stretchers into tunnel-navigable transport systems. Elena's medical training kept patients stable during a journey that would have been challenging for healthy adults. Together, they moved through darkness that smelled of stagnant water and decades-old earth. Sarah leading with night vision equipment while Elena brought up the rear, monitoring vitals by flashlight. Halfway through, the tunnels began to shake, whether from explosions above or structural failure. Elena couldn't tell. A section of ceiling collapsed 20 feet ahead, missing Sarah by inches. When Elena reached her, Sarah was bleeding from a head wound, but her first words were about the patients behind them. Keep them moving, Sarah insisted, though Elena could see she was fighting dizziness. I'm fine. Elena pressed a bandage to Sarah's forehead, their faces inches apart in the cramped tunnel. Space. For a moment, the war above them faded away, and there was only this Sarah's rapid breathing, the feeling of her pulse strong and steady beneath Elena's fingers, the realization that losing this woman would break something in Elena that had just begun to heal. You're not fine, Elena whispered, but you're alive, and that's what matters. Sarah's hand covered hers. Elena, I know, Elena said, because she did know. She could see it in Sarah's eyes, feel it in the way their connection had deepened with every shared crisis, every moment when they'd chosen to trust each other completely, when they finally emerged from the tunnels into dawnlight, all patients accounted for and alive. Elena realized they'd crossed a line there in the darkness. The mission was no longer just about saving lives. It was about saving each other. The safe house was barely that, a half-destroyed school building in a neighborhood that changed hands between factions daily. But it had intact walls, a working well, and most importantly, it was 30 miles from the bombing that had destroyed their hospital. Elena worked by candlelight, checking on patients and trying not to think about the impossible choice bearing down on her. The evacuation chopper arrives at 0600, Sarah said from the doorway. She'd been standing there for several minutes, Elena realized, just watching her work. All medical personnel and patients will be transported to the facility in Jordan. Elena's hands stilled on the bandage she was changing. They'd both known this moment was coming. Mission parameters demanded that non-essential personnel be evacuated when situations became untenable. What Elena hadn't expected was how the thought of leaving would feel like abandoning part of herself. All medical personnel, Elena repeated. What about engineering personnel? Sarah moved closer, her boots silent on the dusty floor. My mission parameters are different. The infrastructure here, water treatment, electrical grid, communications, it all needs to be operational before the next aid convoy arrives. I stay. The finality in Sarah's voice hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd known this woman for barely 2 weeks, but the thought of leaving her behind felt impossible. More than that, it felt like betrayal. How long? Elena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Minimum 6 weeks, could be longer if the situation deteriorates. Elena finished the bandage with mechanical precision, her mind racing through options. Her contract with Doctors Without Borders required her evacuation. Her medical license, her career, her entire life waited for her back in Barcelona. But looking at Sarah, really looking at her, taking in the determined set of her shoulders, the way she carried herself like someone prepared to face whatever came next alone. Elena realized that none of it mattered if it meant walking away from this. I could stay, Elena said quietly. No. Sarah's response was immediate and firm. Elena, you can't. Why not? Elena stood, facing Sarah across the small space. The people here still need medical care. The next convoy won't arrive for weeks. You said it yourself, someone has to stay. Sarah stepped closer, close enough that Elena could see the conflict warring in her dark eyes. Because it's not safe. Because you have a life to go back to. Because she stopped, jaw working as if the words were too difficult to say. Because... what? Because if something happens to you, if I make a decision that gets you killed. Sarah's voice broke slightly. I wouldn't survive that. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Elena reached out, her fingers finding Sarah's face, thumb tracing the line of a scar she'd noticed but never asked about. And you think, I could survive leaving you here? Sarah's hand covered Elena's, pressing it against her cheek. This isn't your fight. Isn't it? Elena moved closer until their foreheads were almost touching. When did it become your fight? When you decided to enlist? When you got your orders? Or when you saw people suffering and decided you had to do something about it? Sarah's eyes closed. Elena, I became a doctor to save lives. It doesn't matter what country those lives are in, or whether saving them is dangerous, or whether it means giving up everything I thought I wanted. Elena's voice was steady, certain. My fight is wherever people need healing, and right now, that's here, with you. When Sarah opened her eyes, Elena saw her answer there before she spoke it. The evac chopper leaves at 0600. Then we better. Made sure all the patients are ready to go. All the patients, Sarah repeated, but not all the medical personnel. Elena smiled, feeling lighter than she had in days. Dr. Elena Vasquez requesting extended deployment for critical infrastructure support operations. Sarah's answering smile was brilliant. Captain Sarah Chen approving medical personnel reassignment for the safety and welfare of local populations. Outside, the pre-dawn darkness was beginning to give way to gray light. Soon, Elena would watch that helicopter disappear into the distance, carrying away her old life and leaving her here with whatever came next. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt more sure of herself than she had in years when Sarah's lips found hers in the growing light, soft and desperate and full of promises neither of them could guarantee they'd live to keep. Elena realized she'd finally found her mission. Not just saving lives, but building a life worth saving. 6 months later, Elena watched Sarah direct the installation of the new water treatment facility, her engineering expertise having transformed not just the infrastructure, but the entire community. The temporary had become permanent, the emergency had become home, and the impossible had become the foundation of everything they built together. Their love story wasn't conventional, forged in crisis, tested by danger, sustained by a shared commitment to something larger than themselves. But as Elena prepared for another day of surgeries in the permanent medical facility they'd established, Sarah's kiss goodbye carrying the promise of dinner together that evening, she realized conventional had never been what she wanted anyway. Sometimes, the most dangerous missions lead to the most extraordinary destinations. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted is the only way to find everything you actually need. Ready to discover your own extraordinary love story? Join our community of readers who believe that love knows no boundaries and that the most powerful romances are born from shared purpose and unwavering courage. Subscribe now for more stories that celebrate love in all its forms. And remember, your greatest adventure might be just one brave decision away.